And ever since, I am I I don't experience depression anymore. I feel very I live a very fulfilled and very joyful and very happy life. I mean, don't get me wrong, my father passed away. I still grieve, my husband and I are trying to make life work. It's still life is still going on, but the darkness that I was in, that's past. That's gone. And I think that when people are experiencing those hard moments, that's absolutely a call for awakening and a call for really looking into what the soul is meant to do. Because hi, my name is Dr. Christine Dollahan. And I had a pre-birth experience. So the earliest memory I have is walking through this spiritual dimension. I can't explain it in any other way. It was sort of concrete, but it wasn't. So there was a lot of energy, a lot of color, and a lot of almost like clouds around me. The color was sort of bright, like pink and very warm colors like pink, white. And it was very warm and it was very beautiful there. It was just so beautiful. I mean, I had not a care in the world. I felt at ease. And I remember seeing sort of buildings is what I could describe them in human terms in the background. And what I perceived was that those buildings were training buildings. Those were buildings that souls were kind of training and getting ready for their lifetime on planet Earth. And so they were making their plans for their lifetimes. They were, studying spiritual topics and they were getting ready. So it was almost like a yeah, like a boot camp or like a camp. And I had come from that, and I was what I can only describe as like walking down a path, but it wasn't a path in human terms, okay? It was more like, less concrete. And I was communicating with somebody next to me who was a spiritual mentor. That's how I can describe him. He was like a very highly evolved spiritual being right next to me, and he was floating next to me or walking next to me. He was sort of tall. I remember him sort of having like darker robes on, but very loving being, but not a being that incarnates on planet Earth anymore. It was more of a being that had kind of evolved and was now helping beings like me, get through their karma, get through their life stuff, get through everything. And so we were walking, and the way we were communicating was via our minds. So we were telepathically communicating. And at the same time that he was communicating with me, I was really communicating with, higher consciousness, God, or whatever else. And I was getting spiritual downloads and spiritual sort of truths about who we truly are in our nature at the same time. And so at some point, I remember kind of getting this feeling of like, oh no, now we're getting close. Now it's almost time for me to go. And I was getting very anxious. And when I say it wasn't me as a person. It was more like my essence. I perceived myself as like a ball of energy, almost like a lightful being. That's also how I was kind of saw myself, was just this like lightful cloak around me. Um, and so we were walking, getting very anxious, and I started bargaining with him, and that's how he presented himself as a male. But there was sort of this also this understanding that, that was just his preference to me. He could be male or female or anything, really. I just perceived him as male. And I was kind of asking him in my mind. I said, do I really have to go? And I had this sort of dread of like, oh man, I've been through this so many times and I know what it's like down there and I know how hard it is down there, and I really don't want to leave this beautiful, just blissful space. Like, I just wanted to stay here because it's very restful and very beautiful and up there. I mean, you don't have a care in the world there. And he was like, well, we discussed this many times now. You need to go another time. And I said, well, can this at least be my last time? Like, do I really need to go another time? And he was like, well, it's really up to you. I mean, if you do everything that you've, decided to accomplish on planet Earth, then, maybe this, he was like, it's probably not going to be your last time, but you could potentially skip over a couple of lifetimes and take a shortcut. And I remember in my essence and in my soul thinking at that time, like, that's what I want to do. I just want to power through this lifetime because I don't want to have to go back there again. And before we knew it, we were at this, what I can only describe as almost like a helicopter hub. So it was round and it was like a vortex and it was swirling in the middle. And I was standing in the edge of it and I could see and perceive other souls standing with their mentors there as well, who had brought them there too. And it was very clear to me that those souls were born too. I mean, at that time, I didn't have that concept of I'm being born, but it was sort of clear to me that those souls were departing too, and that they had gone there to say goodbye to the spiritual realm. And so I was standing there with him, and again, I was still bargaining, and I was like, I really don't want to have to go. Can't we do anything? Like, can't I just stay a couple more minutes or what? Minute. There was no time, but like, it kind of felt that way. And he said, well, we already discussed that. He started getting a little bit like lovingly, but a little bit, like a father figure, almost like we discussed it. Come on, we know you need to go. And then the last thing before he actually pushed me into the vortex, because he knew I wouldn't have gone otherwise, was just remember that we're always here for you. All you need to do is reach out with your mind to us and remember that we're always here for you. And I said, okay. So he pushed me, and I thought in that moment, that, he pushed me down. Again, he pushed me, and I fell down the vortex. And so it was like the tunnel, but in reverse. So the tunnel that a lot of people see in their near death experiences is what I fell through, but in reverse, almost like a two-way street. And I remember falling through the tunnel, and it was a sensation of being sucked into darkness and thinking like, I remember this from the times I was dying before, and then I there was this point where suddenly I was sucked into this dimension and I slammed into my body. I remember literally like slamming into my body, taking a breath, and then just thinking, oh, here we go again, and being just completely exhausted. Landing in my body was awful. It was just like this really like harsh, like rough, I mean, I was like literally slammed. It was like I was slammed into a wall. There was a lot of pain. It was cold. It was bright. And it was just, the thought was just, here I go again. And and then after that, I kind of fell into just this like dark, almost like, what's the word for it? Like not amnesia, but like, just I was unconscious. I mean, I was passed out. And my mom will tell you that on the other side, I was actually 2 weeks late. So I was so late that the doctors were really concerned that I might not be making it, that I might actually be a stillbirth, which I think is why my on the spiritual side I was pushed, right? Because otherwise I probably wouldn't have made it into this body in this lifetime. And my mom also tells the story that um, I was born in 1987, and at the time, they wheeled the babies away. I was born in Switzerland, and they wheeled the babies away into this like later little like nursery place, and there were all these babies screaming. The next day when she came to visit me, and I was like in the smack in the middle, just sleeping, and there was nothing could wake me up. And I tend to tell her, or when I would tell her about it, she was, I was like, yeah, of course, mom. I was just exhausted. I didn't want to be here. It was exhausting being here and being in this body again. And so I just slept. And then I have a couple of more memories after that. I have one memory that must have been maybe a couple of days after my birth, where I was still very clear, like kind of like now, my consciousness was still very clear. And I remember people like looking over my little bassinet and going like, Gucci, Gucci, goo, oh, she's so cute. And I remember all their faces and thinking, why are you talking to me in this baby language? I'm like in here and I can hear you well and clear. And you don't have to talk to me like this because, I'm, you know, in sound mind. You can talk to me normally. And then after that, I kind of fell into just this amnesia. I had little moments in my early, like maybe first year, second year of my life, where I had little flashes of memories of past lifetimes. Specifically, a lifetime I had right before this one, where I was a small girl, and uh, and I had two parents who very much loved me, and I think they lost me when I was a kid, when I was a child, because I remember that they grieved me a lot, and I remember as a soul kind of lifting out of my body and thinking, oh man, I'm really leaving them grieving. Um, and the way I remember that was because my mom would come up to me and say, "Your name's Christine. Your name's Christine." And I would think, I really don't like this name. I liked my name in the last lifetime much better because it was Lisa or something like that. And I was like, I like that one much better. And somehow I liked my mommy and daddy better there too because they were more loving. And that was kind of like it was almost like my spirit floating into this kind of body lifetime reality and realizing, like that now I had this new name and this new identity and kind of coming to terms with that. And I have to tell you that ever since I did, and ever since I accepted this experience to have been completely true and real, and ever since I started going down the path that I was always called to do, regardless of what people say. I mean, my family members are very much against what I'm doing and think it's all out there and whatnot. But I'm just walking my path. I'm just doing what I need to do. And ever since I am I I don't experience depression anymore. I feel I live a very fulfilled and very joyful and very happy life. I mean, don't get me wrong, my father passed away. I still grieve, my husband and I are trying to make life work. It's still life is still going on, but the darkness that I was in, that's past. That's gone. And I think that when people are experiencing those hard moments, that's absolutely a call for awakening and a call for really looking into what the soul is meant to do. Because what I also really truly believe is that everybody's purpose is unique, like a fingerprint. There's not one person that will have exactly the same purpose as you. And you finding it is gonna kind of link you up with the divine spark of God, and it's so needed in the world right now. I mean, I'm living evidence because I was walking, floating down this path to the spot where I was pushed into this lifetime, and my mentor was saying to me, we talked about this. We talked about why you need to come back to planet Earth. We know you don't really want to come because you know how hard it is down there, but we talked about the fact that you have certain things to do on this planet, that you have specific things to do to work through, lessons to learn, things to remember. The one thing I got mostly out of that conversation, or this telepathic conversation we had, was that, most important thing is to remember that we're coming from divinity, that we're coming from the spot and we're going back there. Also, the memory of these buildings in the distance was really, really clear to me. It was very clear to me that those were the buildings I came from, where I planned my lifetime, where my other soulmates and soul friends were still staying, and where they had been. It was like a preparation place for life on planet Earth. And so, yeah, 100%. We have a contract here, we have a plan here. Nothing is coincidence. I know that for sure. For me, it was very clear when my mentor said to me, "Well, you can choose. I mean, if you want to get a lot done in this lifetime, like we discussed, if you get every single thing right, and maybe you do overtime, like those kids that go to school and they they do extra classes and extracurricular things, then maybe we can, shortcut it and you don't have to come back another two, three, four, 500 times, whatever. And I remember back then thinking, like, that's what I want to do. I want to power through my life like nothing else. I want to just get it all out, get it all done with. And that's really been my MO in my lifetime has been, I wanted to grow spiritually. I wanted to really, get clean and clear with all the topics in my life, relationship, money, all of it, and really understand, where I was coming from, where I was going, what this life was all about, and how I could help others, get there. Diseases can certainly be a way of transcending uh, things and getting to a spiritual level that can help us evolve. So I do think that a lot of diseases are planned, and that they're either planned and or um, a choice. I also believe that people can choose when they want to leave planet Earth. I think that when you've, even subconsciously, decided that you don't want to live anymore, you will come down with disease. So but I do believe, because I think that was the question, I do believe that um, disease is can be in a spiritual plan and can be in a contract, 100%. I actually had when I was mentioning, when I was a 1-year-old baby and I kept having these memories bubble up of past lifetimes. I had one memory bubble up of a lifetime where I was uh, very much a mentally disabled child. And I remember in that lifetime, I was very afraid of dying too. There was a sense underneath me that I was afraid of dying. And I also remember dying as a sensation of floating out of my body and realizing, oh, wow, I had to go through this lifetime to sort of, get rid of some karma to balance the scales because I had done something really bad in another lifetime. I wasn't a very good person there. We all intuitively know when we're going to leave this planet. Um, and I believe that we also have a free choice of whether or not we want to leave it. I think that we've planned our lifetimes and we say we want to go to this age or that age, but I also think that we can extend it or shorten it. I do believe that, and this is not just an opinion. Actually, I being intuitive and still being in contact with my mentor. I've gotten my number for when I'm going to exit, and there was this idea of like, well, you have a five-year leeway. I mean, if you want to stay 5 years longer, you can. And having had this experience, I'm kind of like, nah, I'm good. I'll exit when you say it's okay to exit. Um, obviously we have free choice. Otherwise, people wouldn't, have the choice to end their life early. Um, I do believe that, that will actually loop you back into another lifetime where you just have to do everything all over again. Because that was also very clear to me in my conversation with my mentor. He was like, I know you really don't want to go, but please don't end your life that kind, like, because you're here for a purpose. You've decided to come here, and there's this contract that you signed up for that is really important that you get it to the end. um Otherwise you're just gonna have to repeat the grade. I 100% believe that the difficulties that humanity is currently facing are here for their soul growth. 100%. I think both on the collective as well as um on a individual level. I believe that I actually wrote my dissertation about that. My theory is that we're going through a really, really big shift in consciousness, and the only reason that this shift in consciousness can come about, or the only way it can come about, is if, as a collective, as humanity, as a collective, as well as individuals, we go through hard stuff. It's like the hero's journey, right? The hero has to face the dragon first before they can elevate their consciousness, and so if more and more individuals go through this hard stuff and then they come out on the other end, at some point we're going to be a critical mass collectively, and it's going to shift planet Earth to a much softer and more spiritually elevated place. And that's honestly this pre-birth experience is, I think it's not a coincidence that I was meant to remember this. I think it was meant for me to share this, but I also believe that it definitely pushed me into what I'm meant to be doing here on planet Earth, which is explaining people, exactly that. Because when you understand why you're here and there's this purpose, and I think that this purpose is behind every soul has that same purpose. There's no better or worse purpose. But I think we're all meant to understand and to awaken to that fact and then collectively raise the vibrations. I think that when I was born in 1987, we were still in the third dimension as a collective, very much in this physical reality and thinking that there was nothing very much beyond the physical reality. And I think it started in the 90s and then into 2012, I think we started moving into the fourth dimension. The frequency of planet Earth started getting higher or was raised. And I think we're very much on path to going into the fifth dimension where we understand that this lifetime is just a stage between, or a role we're playing between lifetimes and between life after life. I think where more and more people are coming in and remembering their births, where more and more people will have near-death experiences and come forward with it and awaken the rest of humanity to that reality. Because I think when we know that, then we can live our life in a very different way, in a much elevated and higher consciousness, right? Because we're not just running around blindly wondering what we're doing here. If I have a chance to give people out there a message, I would say that the sole purpose for being on this planet is to remember who we truly are, which is unconditional love. That's my message. I think that unconditional love is where it's at, and remembering that we all come from this place and we all go back to this place, and to not take things so seriously because they really aren't, and to laugh more often about things, even when they seem hard, to just say, huh, look at this. This is happening now. It's happening for a reason. And it's for me to remember where I truly came from and who I truly am, which is love. I thank you all for listening to my experience with an open mind and an open heart, and hopefully it is helpful to you all. And if you want to reach me, I'm Dr. Christine Dollahan. You can reach me via my social media platforms. On Instagram, I'm at It's Dr. Christine. I also am on YouTube at It's Dr. Christine, and as well as on Facebook. It's Dr. Christine. So that's how you can reach out to me. And thank you so much for letting me share.